Chapter 13. Lucky Number. Louise stared at the open window, her heart pounding. Someone had entered the apartment. Was the intruder still there, hiding somewhere in the dark rooms? I must warn Jean and Cousin Cynthia, she thought, but before she could move, a scream rang out. Cousin Cynthia! Louise dashed back through the dining rooms and into the small hall, which led to the bedrooms. The light was on in Mrs. Carson's room. Jean and her cousin stood in front of the dresser, looking at the mirror. Scrawled across it in red were the words, "Mind your own business." Someone got in again, Jean said shakily. With a trembling hand, Cousin Cynthia picked up a broken lipstick from a little gold basket of cosmetics. He used this to write with. "Let's check our room, Louise," said Jean. "Come on." "Wait, go quietly," Louise said. "Whoever did it might still be here." Cautiously, the three went up the hall. Jean reached into her room and turned on the wall switch. No one there. But printed in red on their mirror was the warning, "Dana's, go home or else." "But how did anyone get in?" asked Cousin Cynthia. "I know I locked all the windows and doors." "I'll show you," Louise said softly. "But first, call the police. It's wisest to let them tackle the intruder, if there is one. Tell them to come to the kitchen door," she ran on. "Meanwhile, we'll keep watch. If anyone is here and tries to make a break for it, we'll try to stop him." The three thought uneasily of the two dark bedrooms they had not looked into and the several large closets in the old-fashioned apartment. After Mrs. Carson had made a low-voiced call to the police station, Louise led the way to the kitchen and switched on the light. The room was empty. The window was still wide open. "I know I locked that," Cousin Cynthia said positively. "Here's the answer," whispered Louise. She pointed to a round, neat hole in the glass above the lock. The intruder made this hole with a glass cutter, then reached through and unlocked the window. "But how did he reach the fire escape?" asked Cousin Cynthia. "The bottom is high off the ground." "I'll go down," said Jean, "and see if I can find out." "Take this," said Cousin Cynthia, giving her a flashlight from a cabinet drawer. "Thanks. Keep your eyes and ears open," Jean cautioned, as she climbed over the windowsill. Jean made her way quietly down the old fire escape. Here and there light shone out on the metal steps, but at the second floor, where they ended, it was dark. The young detective beamed her flashlight into the narrow alley below. A cat streaked out from behind a barrel and disappeared into the blackness. But nothing else stirred. Jean played the light along the edge of the fire escape. Suddenly she spotted a tiny strand of something caught on the rusty metal. She picked it up and examined it carefully. A shred of rope! So that's how he did it, Jean thought. She hastened up the iron stairs, climbed back inside, and showed her find. "The intruder threw a rope over the movable part of the fire escape and pulled it down," she said. "After he climbed up, the bottom rose up again, and all he had to do was detach his rope and come up. To reach the ground again, he only needed to go down the stairs. The bottom of the fire escape tilted downward under his weight." "I hope he is already gone," Louise whispered. As she spoke, there was a knock on the hall door behind the curtain. Louise opened it and admitted two policemen. They swiftly searched the apartment, but the intruder was gone. "That's a relief," said Cousin Cynthia. After one of the officers had jotted down the facts in his report book, Louise asked if they would inform Captain Brown what had happened. "He's in a different precinct, I know," she added, "but this incident is connected with the case he's working on." The policeman promised and left. "Now, what'll we do about that broken window?" Cousin Cynthia asked with a sigh. As she spoke, the telephone rang. Louise went to the hall to answer. It was Aunt Harriet calling to see if the girls still intended to come home the next day. "Yes," said Louise, and suggested that they bring Cousin Cynthia with them. Aunt Harriet agreed at once. "I'm sorry, dear," she added, "but I couldn't find out if Mr. Denver is in charge of the drawing for the car. I haven't been able to get in touch with Mr. Welsh, the carnival chairman." "Never mind," said Louise. "We'll find out tomorrow." When she returned to the kitchen to report the conversation, a strange sight met her eyes. In front of the window was a table, and piled on it were 2 chairs with a small stool on top of them, and crowning it all, a stack of pots and pans. "Cousin Cynthia and I have prepared a reception for our caller," Jean said with a grin. "At least, we'll hear him if he tries to get in again." But the night passed quietly, and in the morning the precarious tower was still in place. The girls had persuaded their cousin to go to Oak Falls with them. While she was packing, Louise and Jean went to the wax queen's shop. When Ozma let them in, he quickly assured them that the sculptress was all right, despite her harrowing evening. He said that he had been greatly shocked when he learned what had happened, but felt that with the police keeping close watch on the place, no one would try to force his way in. "I hope you're right," said Louise, and asked where the wax queen was. "In her studio. She's making another bust." "We came to say goodbye," Jean told the elderly man. "We're going home." Ozma looked worried. "I'm very sorry to hear that. I admit to feeling safer when you're around." He seemed so genuinely affected by their leave-taking that they quickly assured him they would be back soon. The wax queen had heard them arrive and came out now to greet them affectionately. "We hope to locate your brother tonight," said Jean, and explained they were flying to Oak Falls that afternoon. The queen looked worried and begged them to be careful. Before leaving, the girls looked over the figures that were for sale and decided to buy a black wax cat for Aunt Harriet. As soon as it was wrapped, they said goodbye, then took a bus back to the apartment. A new pane of glass had been put in the window and lunch was ready. At 2 o'clock, the girls and their cousin set off for the airport. The plane took off exactly on time and Miss Dana was at the Oak Falls airport to meet them. "I'm so happy you came," she said. "It was getting kind of lonesome here." "Even with Applecore around?" Jean asked. "Applecore? What's that?" Cousin Cynthia questioned. Aunt Harriet laughed. "That's Louise and Jean's nickname for the young woman who works for us. Her name is Cora Apple." Jean laughed. "Applecore is good-natured and helpful. But oh, she is clumsy. She's always falling or knocking something over, but she's fine anyway." Miss Dana said she was to pick up the girl at a supermarket. She drove directly there and they waited in front. "Here comes Applecore," Louise told her cousin. A frowsy-looking girl in a flapping coat was hurrying towards them. They were surprised that she did not have her packages in her cart. Instead, she was clutching 2 huge bags, one in each arm. Louise and Jean jumped out to help her. Before they had gone 5 feet, Applecore tripped. One bag flew from her arm and the contents spilled out on the pavement. Louise and Jean tried not to laugh as they chased the rolling grapefruit and helped her gather up the canned goods. "I'm terribly sorry," said Cora. "Hi, Louise and Jean. How are you?" "Don't ask me how I am. I'm as bad as ever." The girls laughed. "No harm done," said Louise. She introduced Cousin Cynthia and the group drove home. Half an hour later, the Danas and their visitor were having tea in the living room, while the girls told their aunt all that had happened in New York. As they were talking, Applecore entered with a plate of strawberry tarts, which she began to pass. "Someone is certainly trying to frighten you off the case," Miss Dana said to the girls. "But I can't understand how they knew you were in New York, or where you intended to stay," added Cousin Cynthia. Suddenly Cora gave a loud gasp, stopped short, and the tarts slid to one side of the plate. Louise leaped to save them. "Take it easy, Applecore," she said, and set the pastry on the table. "What's the matter?" The young maid looked stricken. "Oh, no," she said. "How could I?" "How could you what?" Jean asked. "I'm terrible. I forgot," Cora said. "Oh, please, girls, and Miss Dana, forgive me." "Cora," Aunt Harriet said kindly, "whatever is it? Sit down and tell us." She patted the sofa beside her, and Applecore perched miserably on the edge. "It was this way," she said. "The day you left for New York, Miss Dana, a man called up and asked how he could get in touch with the girls. He said it was an urgent case, and I got so excited I told him where you all were going to be." "Did you ask his name?" queried Jean. "No, I was too excited," said Cora shamefaced. "I meant to tell you about it, but the whole thing slipped my mind till I heard you talking." Miss Dana sighed. "It doesn't matter now," she said. "Just forget the incident." "Yes, ma'am," said the maid, and repeated her apologies again. Dejected, she went back to the kitchen. "Now we know how we were found," said Louise. "And I'll bet someone's been keeping track of us ever since," Cousin Cynthia declared. "Maybe," Jean said, then chuckled. "But tonight we'll be doing the tracking." That evening, the three Danas and Mrs. Carson went to the carnival. Immediately, the girls sought out the chairman, Mr. Welsh. Louise asked him if Mr. Denver was in charge of the prizes. When the man said yes, the girls felt a thrill of excitement. "But he sent word he couldn't come tonight," Mr. Welsh went on. "He asked me to take care of things." Louise was stunned. Had Denver found out that the Danas were in Oak Falls and stayed away deliberately? Jean said to Mr. Welsh, "Do you know where he is?" The chairman paused a moment. "It seems to me that I recall seeing a schedule which said he was to appear 2 nights from now at a carnival in a place called Harper. That's outside New York City." "Thank you very much," said Louise, and hurried back to her family. Quickly, she explained what had happened and said, "I think we should report this to Captain Brown right away." The others agreed. Aunt Harriet said, "Why don't you girls go home and make the call? Cynthia and I'll remain here," she smiled. "It's just possible we may win a prize." "Hope you do," said Jean. The sisters hurried away. When they reached the house, Louise put in the call. Captain Brown was interested in their news. "I want you and your sister to go to that Harper carnival with a couple of detectives. Get a good look at whoever draws the number and wins. If you're sure they're the same 2 girls you saw at Penfield and in New Jersey, we'll arrest them in Denver." Jean and Louise were elated. "He's practically in our grasp," exclaimed Jean as Louise put down the phone. "Once the police have him for the car racket, he won't be able to threaten his sister anymore." "I hope you're right," said Louise. "I can hardly wait till Thursday night." Presently, the girls heard the car come into the driveway, and a few minutes later, their cousin and aunt walked in. Miss Dana was carrying a small, good-looking clock radio. She beamed. "I won this! My lucky number was the first one drawn out of the hat." "Congratulations," the sisters said together. "It's a wonderful radio," said Miss Dana. "It has a timer so you can set the radio to go on and off whenever you want to." Cousin Cynthia spoke up. "You can put it alongside your bed and fall asleep to music." Louise said, "I'll bet you'll be the first one to bed tonight." Her aunt said she was going immediately and asked them all to come up and hear her radio. Lights were extinguished and the group went upstairs. The girls gave Aunt Harriet the wax cat they had bought for her. She was delighted and placed it proudly on her bedside table. When Louise and Jean awakened the next morning, Aunt Harriet's new radio was on. They went in to speak to her, and she said she was trying out the alarm. It was set for 10 a.m. to remind her of an appointment she had with the dentist. Just before 10 o'clock, the girls again went into the room. Cora was there using the duster attachment of the vacuum cleaner on the table where the clock radio and the cat stood. Suddenly the alarm went off. Cora jumped, startled. The vacuum attachment swept across the table and knocked the wax cat to the floor. "Oh!" Cora screamed as the statue broke into several pieces. Instantly she burst into tears. Louise and Jean stared at the ruined wax figure. With a sudden gasp, Jean stooped down and picked out one of the pieces. "Look!" she exclaimed. "A diamond!" End of chapter 13.